Hello there, I'm John Niles, and I'm from Seattle, where I live and work as a transportation policy researcher at the nonprofit Center for Advanced Transportation and Energy Solutions, known as CATES in short. I also provide advice and technical assistance as an independent consultant at a firm I started named Global Telematics. I was visiting San Diego during February and March 2023 to enjoy better weather and collegial friendship from the climate action advocates of the San Diego 350 organization. SD350 invited me to present the slides you'll see in the next few minutes on Saturday morning, March 4th, 2023 at an educational community workshop on microtransit, co-sponsored by the Urban Collaborative Project. The CEO of that organization, Barry Pollard, welcomed 50 participants to the event held at the Malcolm X Library in Southeast San Diego. My friend and colleague in San Diego, Sanjeev Nanda, a mobility policy and technology specialist, was the lead developer of the March 4th workshop, and I was pleased to help him make a presentation at that. Now, the March 4th event was designed to advance public understanding of how government and business could expand public transit by adding some smaller vehicles to their fleets of big buses and even bigger trains and trolleys. Other event co-sponsors are listed on the slide, and many of them made additional presentations, which are described on the same page where this slide deck is presented. In this presentation, I'm not talking about micromobility. That means electric bikes and pedal bikes, scooters. That's all micromobility. These are good climate-friendly modes being encouraged. But in this presentation, I am stressing microtransit, which means small motorized vehicles with a roof and windows to keep you dry in the rain, warm in cold weather, holding 6 to 12 passengers. Microtransit, providing flexible service based on going many places in a specific zone, is meant to be an extension of the familiar existing transit modes running on fixed routes to major destinations, such as buses and trolleys. These are well known in San Diego, of course. Vehicles like vans and small buses can work in places and at times where and when the big transit vehicles don't work very well. Microtransit means battery electric passenger vehicles like the one shown here from Lightning E-Motors, the two bigger ones to the left side of the screen, and smaller electric ones like the Fred service in downtown San Diego from Ride Circuit. This is a photograph taken on March 4th at the workshop. These were parked outside the Malcolm X Library where this presentation was first made. Now, climate action advocates at San Diego 350 offered the March 4th workshop because gasoline-fueled vehicles are a climate problem. Most cars do use gasoline even as electric cars rise in popularity, and these cars have a problem. Those cars burning gasoline as fuel as the most popular mode in California and the many other places, they emit a lot of carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere, a human-made cause of global warming and bad weather in all seasons. Now, automobiles represent a very large share of the overall greenhouse gas problem. In fact, 25% is shown by the red slice in the state government pre-pandemic analysis. Now, as the pandemic wanes, cars are an even more popular mode to get around San Diego, and growing traffic is a problem. This bar chart with one giant set of bars illustrates that the biggest proportion of travel in the San Diego region, more than 3/4, more than 75%, is in single occupant cars, completely overshadowing all the other modes such as carpooling and public transit, more than work at home, bike riding, SOV, single occupant vehicles. Just the driver is the government name for solo driving, and SOV is the biggest part of the problem for sure. Now, when you look at a transit map, it appears that buses and trolleys cover San Diego pretty well, and they do kinda. If you are close to a transit stop at the beginning of a trip and at the end of your trip, it's a time of day when they're operating, transit works pretty well. But when you look at a detailed street map like this, it's easy to see that there are extra blocks to reach main streets, plus a lot of canyons and hills. And these slow down many people, maybe even most people, from trying to walk to transit. Walking more than a level quarter mile or even a half mile for some folks is a problem. So we've got to think about how to fill in the gaps with a different kind of transit. So let me explain microtransit. It uses 6 to 12 passenger vans dispatched when and where needed across all the roads in a service zone. Here are 3 examples of destinations or origins for a trip on microtransit. It performs similarly to how private cars operate. It can go between your home and transit. It can go between a home and a facility. That could be a workplace, shopping center, clinic, government building, all manner of non-residential destinations. And you go where you want, when you want. It also goes, of course, between transit and these destination facilities. So you can have trips that involve another mode. The streets go everywhere that people live, and they go to where people want to go, and that's the advantage. Like explained by Ronnie Narula Woods of LA Metro Micro on March 4th, you use an app on your phone, or you call directly on the telephone to say where you're going, maybe from your home to a trolley stop, where you're available to be picked up. And that's usually a designated point, maybe not on your doorstep, but within a few minutes walk. And pretty quickly, hopefully within a few minutes, a vehicle will come and pick you up. You'll hear back on your app when it's supposed to arrive. Sometimes you can even see it on a little map on your app. When it comes, you board and you ride to where you want to go, say from your home to a transit center. Maybe from a transit center to your final destination, if it's far away, outside of the walking distance to the from the transit stop to your destination. And of course, it can go even directly from your home to a destination. And sometimes those destinations are set by policy, but physically, all destinations in a service zone can be covered. It's very important that micro transit vehicles are electric. They can be, they should be, and they're going to be. It's taken industry some time to put these on the street, but it's now happening. What's important is that in electric vehicles, no petroleum fuels are burned and no carbon is generated. No carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, a cause of global warming. At the same time, electricity is less expensive than gasoline as an energy source for vehicles, and that's important for affordability. The examples here show an electric van compared to a gasoline van. So the gasoline van running 250 days, 100 miles per day, compared to a gasoline van, saves $8,000 in fuel costs in a year and also avoids putting 32 tons of carbon into the atmosphere. This is important. Vans should be electric, and the ones that we showed in the photo at the event were in fact electric, and that's the way they need to go. Now let's look at the priorities for choosing the service zones for the expansion of microtransit beyond where it is now. I mean, for the most equitable use of public transportation resources, we need to focus geographically where society's problems exist. That is where the mobility disadvantaged population lives. And so here are some ideas that my San Diego 350 colleague Sanjeev Nanda and I have come up with and are recommending and studying as good areas for future deployment. For example, one priority would be where there is a high percentage of folks with either no car, or you have one car households where you have families that don't all each have a car, which is often the case in wealthier neighborhoods. We think that it's important to stay integrated with existing transit, especially at the beginning, to make sure that we're supporting existing fixed route transit in San Diego. We can go further out later, and one reason to go further out is to get to where affordable housing and the potential for affordable housing exists. We think tying microtransit to the areas where people can more afford to live is a very important concept for the deployment of microtransit. One of the big issues, one of the important problems in microtransit that I need to raise is the cost issue. It's quite a challenge. Let's do some comparisons. In this chart, we see a lightly loaded bus might pick up 10 people in an hour. You do the math on what the cost per vehicle hour is. That'd be $143 an hour, and that can lead to $14 per rider pickup cost. Now, early microtransit, the first attempts to do it, can be quite expensive. Boardings per vehicle hour have come in only at 3 per hour. You hope for more, but sometimes that's the best you can do in starting off. And you combine that with a cost per vehicle hour, which is less than that of a bus, but still expensive since you're paying a good wage to a driver, $84 an hour, and you do the math there, and the cost per passenger comes out to $28 per rider, which is twice as much for a lightly loaded bus. That's a problem, and it causes some resistance in transit agencies on microtransit. But there is hope for the future with advanced microtransit, where with better dispatching and some automation of the driving, talking about driverless, talk about that more in a minute, offers some lower cost numbers, more like these, which is I'm showing on the bottom line. There's an opportunity for more boardings per hour, four and a half people, but that's between 4 and 5, maybe even higher than that with better dispatching. Starting in areas where there are lots of riders, you can do that. If you can drive down the cost per vehicle hour by automating the driving, and we think that in the long run you can get to a cost per passenger boarding which is less than that for a lightly loaded bus. That is $9 an hour, and you're starting to talk about levels of costs that are of course higher than fares, but are reasonable for governments to kick in and with subsidies and keep the costs down. So there is hope with work for getting the costs under control, but it is an issue, and this came up on in the March 4th workshop. And speaking of automation, driverless vehicles are coming. These are examples of some under development. They work on all roads in a pre-mapped, carefully surveyed zone, organized into a service where trips are available on demand. I mean, think of it like a taxi cab or Uber without a driver. It's hard to believe, but early versions of vehicles like these are working with paying passengers in Phoenix. They're being tested in San Francisco and in China and some other countries around the world, and they really represent the future of microtransit and why there can be more of it. We don't have to worry about a lack of drivers, which is a national problem now. But we are talking about a safe way to move people to many more destinations than you can possibly do with trains or buses on a fixed route. Basically going to places where buses and trains don't carry enough people to be worthwhile, smaller vehicles, smaller loads, but filling in the gaps. Microtransit, automated, we could call it robo taxis if you like. Very important to understand that people are still involved even in driverless vehicles. You're going to need staff to help passengers with mobility challenges, and they won't necessarily be drivers. They may be in the vehicles, or they may be stationed at important destinations where lots of people arrive and need to be helped. But there will be human assistance as needed in these services to meet ethical and requirements of the Americans with Disability Act. In terms of funding, there are sources of funding. Local parking districts have been tried and are being used as a source of funding in the San Diego area. The downtown free ride service is funded with parking money by the city of San Diego. Grants from the California Air Resources Board is covering a couple of services already underway in the San Diego area. And an idea that Sanjeev Nanda has developed and is going to be exploring further in the months ahead is, could you work with a surcharge on infill development in new zones? In other words, in areas where new affordable housing is going in, but without transit, perhaps a surcharge placed on the cost of building these new facilities could be used to support microtransit, to carry people from there to where the transit already reaches. Another thought with microtransit is advertising. So the Ride Circuit Company, which operates service in San Diego County already, has had success in attracting advertising dollars in various implementations around the United States. So creativity about financing gives some options and keeps the fares lower. So I hope and trust this overview gets you thinking underway on microtransit. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. I want to thank San Diego 350 for giving me the opportunity to work with them and advance some ideas, education on how it could work. And good luck to San Diego in advancing microtransit deployment in the areas where people really need additional rides around the county. Please look at the other presentations on the page where this presentation is posted, and do follow San Diego 350 closely as it works to help the climate, and as well as provide mobility service. Advocate for good mobility, carbon free. That's what we're talking about here. Bye for now.